The weather this November has been like June. It's been gorgeous. It's been incredible. It's been unbelievable, but it's still gloomy here in Tuscaloosa despite highs in the upper 80s and sunshine, Rodney. That's because for the first time since 2010, Alabama has a second loss prior to the Iron Bowl. That happened that year when they lost at South Carolina and at LSU, and then, of course, lost on the comeback. That was the last time that Alabama lost 2 games in the regular season prior to the Iron Bowl. They wound up losing 3 games that year after falling to Auburn. That's the last time they lost 3 games in the regular season. But all those possibilities are alive now because Alabama's got a tough game coming up at Ole Miss. But coming off this loss this past Saturday night, Rod, it dropped Alabama to 7-2, 32-31 in overtime in Baton Rouge. And you know, Alabama struggled on offense for much of this one. Once again, the wide receiving core from week to week, we don't really know who it's going to be. I mean, it's just a different group of guys every week. Alabama couldn't really get anything going consistently until the fourth quarter. Bryce Young completed less than 50% of his passes, but he did finish with 328 yards and a touchdown, and an incredible touchdown there in the fourth quarter. Did have a pick on that first drive of the game, which really hurt. Alabama drove it all the way down inside the 5 and got no points. Jahmyr Gibbs had 99 yards rushing. He had over 120 yards total yards, but LSU always answered. Jaden Daniels was a problem. He did it with his legs. He did it with his arm. 182 yards passing, 95 yards rushing. Alabama's offense never had the ball with a lead. That meant every time they took the lead, LSU came right back and either tied it or took the lead. And in the fourth quarter, it came down to Will Reichard making a field goal. He did to get it in the overtime. Alabama fought and scratched to get their touchdown in overtime after having to take the ball. And then on the very next play, after Alabama scores, Jaden Daniels, 25 yards, basically walked in around the edge. And then LSU went for 2. Taylor, the freshman, tied in. They ran that little pick play. He got to the corner of the end zone. Battle was late getting over. And that's your ball game, 32-31. So Alabama's lost 2 times this season on the last play of the game. Their one loss last year in the regular season was on the last play of the game. Their loss prior to that, the 2019 Iron Bowl, was basically on the last play of the game. So Alabama's losing some, but once again, when they lose, it's in a heartbreaking fashion.
Well, I thought, looking at this game, I thought the defense played really well in the first half. Thought they did extremely well. I thought the offense obviously didn't play as well. Then in the second half, the offense starts producing and the defense goes in the tank. As you mentioned, Gary, the offense hands them the lead, 3 times? They can't hold it. The offense never possesses the ball with a lead in the game. So, that's just kind of, as you said, you summed it up.
You look back at the Tennessee game, there were opportunities for Alabama to win that game, plenty of them. In fact, you would have thought when Alabama had the ball with the game tied and first down at the Tennessee 30 or so, they were going to win that football game. They didn't. And in this game, you take the lead in overtime. LSU has to score a touchdown. But going back to the regulation, Alabama scored a couple of touchdowns, went for 2-point conversions both times, didn't make it either time. When you look back on that, at the end of the game, had they kicked an extra point either time, Will Reichard's field goal would have been not to force overtime, but to win the game. I know that's what the chart says, but, let's be real here. Do you take points off the board for an opportunity to get more points that early in the game? It came back to bite Alabama. Regardless of what the chart says, they kick an extra point there, they win the game.
Yeah. Well, a lot of ifs, too. Listen, they have the ball. They have a great possession on the opening possession. They're inside the 10-yard line. They get the pick in the end zone. LSU does. Stymies a drive. Think about the difference that makes in the game. Think about Jace McClellan. He looks like he's taking it to the house. He gets run down. That's 4 points there because that only resulted in a field goal rather than a touchdown. There's a lot of ifs, a lot of things that you could find that maybe would have changed the outcome of the game. But the bottom line is this, Gary, and we've talked about this. We talked about it last year. We've talked about it all this year. Alabama's just not playing very well. That's the bottom line. They're not playing very well overall, offensively, defensively, on a consistent basis. Still a lot of the same things that have haunted them throughout the last 2 years. We saw them again at LSU.
Yeah, Ronnie, you make a great point. Here's the deal. Alabama's 7-2. They could be 9-0. They could just as easily be 5-4. The bottom line is when you play this many close games, the odds are you're not going to win them all. And when you look back to when Alabama might lose a game during the regular season, they might not. They didn't play many close games. Most of those games they won going away. And even then, when they played a close game, we know how many times the field has been rushed since Nick Saban's been here. So you play more than 1 or 2 close games, your odds go up that you're going to lose some of those games. That's the bottom line here. This Alabama team is not dominant. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Most teams aren't. Well, as we've talked about plenty on this show, what Nick Saban's done here the last 15 years, you should not be able to do. in this league. It should be more like it's been with LSU or Auburn or even Georgia until recently. You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. Tennessee, Alabama has stayed at that level. But the fact of the matter is, like you said, this year, this is what this team is. They're probably going to play a close game on Saturday. You know, they may play another close game. Who knows where even the Iron Bowl stands at this point. And then in a bowl game, this is a football team that has to fight, scratch, and claw, and they've lost 2 times, and we're just not accustomed to that. If this is a lot of other places, it's not a big deal. But at Alabama, it brings up discussions. Is the dynasty over? Has Saban lost it? It comes with the territory. If you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. When you win like this goes with it.
Yeah, you're going to be judged by those standards. There's no question about it. You ask, is the dynasty over? I mean, that's the question. That's what a lot of people are talking about, whether it's national media, whether it's on TigerInsider.com, wherever it might be. A lot of people are asking that. Again, I think, too, Gary, with saying that you're judged by those standards because you have a season where you lose a couple of games, maybe even lose 3 games. I don't think that necessarily means the dynasty is over. I think sometimes you do have to make changes. I think sometimes those include coaching staff changes, whatever they might be. The question is, you know, will Nick Saban make the changes necessary that he feels necessary that have to be made to get Alabama back to where that championship level? He's done it every time he's needed to. So I think this time it only stands to reason. Whatever changes he feels necessary, he'll make them.
Yeah, Rodney, I was going to answer that question too. Yeah, yes, that's the answer. Yeah. I mean, as long as he's the head coach here, these people that are talking about he won't do what it takes, are you crazy? I mean, he'll do what it takes. Doesn't mean it's pleasurable if he has to make coaching changes. I'm not saying that he's going to like it, but he's always done that. He's not going to stop now. He'll do whatever he thinks is in the best interest of the program. And let's be clear on this, Rodney. He said it on Monday. There's not a play that's called that he doesn't have the right to veto. There's not a defense that's called that he doesn't have the right to veto. There isn't a meeting that he doesn't have the right to override. He's in charge of the program. He makes that clear to everybody in the organization. He defines everything for them to do, but the buck stops with him. And he's not trying to pass the buck to anybody, Rodney. That's kind of where we're going here with Coach Talk. With regards to what's going on with this football coaching staff, Nick Saban was asked this week about the coordinators and their roles, and Coach refuses to point fingers at any one particular person. He says getting the team back on track will require every aspect of the program to improve.
We need to play better on both sides of the ball, absolutely. We got to play better up front, and we got to make less mistakes, you know, overall organizationally, and there's not a coach or a player in this organization that can't do things better, all right, to help our players have a better chance to be successful. And I think the players themselves also have to be accountable and go out there and do things that they're supposed to do, especially in critical times in a game.
All right, Rod, and I'm not making excuses for anybody. And like I said, I have full confidence Nick Saban will make the changes he feels needs to be made. But last year, Bill O'Brien didn't look too bad when he had Jameson Williams and John Mechie and Brian Robinson and Bryce Young thrown to those guys. 2 years ago, 2020, Pete Golding was the defensive coordinator, wasn't he, when they went 13-0? So I'm not saying that they don't deserve some blame, but to just try to put it strictly on 2 people, as a lot of fans are doing, I think that's short-sighted, and I don't think it's fair.
Well, I think if you look at the Arkansas game, the way Alabama came out, they were playing really well, and then Bryce goes down. That injury, I mean,
Change
look,
things.
you can't really put a tag on how much that affected this team, this offense, in terms of the rhythm. Bryce Young hasn't practiced much. Again, those aren't excuses. It's just what happened.
Yeah.
And I think it certainly has contributed to the way the team's played since Arkansas.
Real quickly, one thing we are seeing, probably more so than we've seen in the past, I don't know if there's a disconnect now as more time has passed from those teams, and also there's been a lot of coaching changes. A lot of these guys that played under Nick Saban were with different coaches. A lot of former players, both in the NFL and guys that aren't, out on social media voicing their concerns. Did that surprise you?
Not really, because I think, you know, when you look at the pride they have, what they helped build here, Gary, I mean, they certainly see it struggling right now. They see maybe a team that obviously has been really undisciplined, not playing with a lot of confidence. I think it certainly is something that you would expect them the way they responded.
All right, more football coming up. We'll get into Alabama Ole Miss. That's going to be another tough one coming up Saturday in Oxford. Basketball, though. Alabama ranked number 20 in the preseason poll for the men. And, boy, they opened up impressively last night. Right, what I really liked about this is they won by 21. They scored 75 points. But they went 3 of 28 from three-point range. Think about that. I mean, that's 10% now. That's not going to cut it over the long haul. But you know what they did? they guarded. You know, they held their opponent to 54%. They had 67 rebounds, got a lot of second chance points. In fact, from 2-point range, they shot very, very well. So you guard people, you get on the backboard, you can overcome a bad three-point shooting night. Now, they want to shoot better from three. They really need to, because they're going to, you know, they shot 28 of them. They're going to shoot 28, 30, 35 a game. But overall, there's Sears, the new point guard. Boy, look at his patience there. Rodney, I think this team has got the kind of athleticism, the kind of depth, the kind of interchangeable parts to play the way that certainly that Nate Oates wants to play. And they're going to guard people this year, and they're going to rebound. Get that three-point shooting going. Look out.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, you talked about defending. That's the key right there. I think that's the one thing that most everyone has noticed about this team, or noticed about it in that game last night, was the way they defended, how improved they are defensively.
Yeah, a lot of length, man. 9 block shots. I don't know, they had 9 block shots in the game last year. All right, Alabama women also opening up as part of a doubleheader last night at Coleman Coliseum, taking on Alabama A&M. And, you know, Alabama did in this game what they should do. A&M just doesn't have the athletes to stay with Alabama. Still, a lot like the men. They play a lot of different players. They've got some athleticism. They've got a lot of players that can shoot it. And you win 98-51, and to be honest with you, it could have been worse. That's a good start for the Alabama women. You know, they went deep in the NIT last year. They went to the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. Christy Curry's finally got it going here, and this could be an NCAA tournament team again this year. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, we'll take a look at this week's opponent, the one-loss Ole Miss Rebels. That's right. Also, Alabama got a big win on the recruiting front last week. We'll check in with Rodney Orr about what he likes about the 2024 quarterback commit, Julian Sayin. Just saying. That's coming up next. And we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. And welcome back to TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Well, Lane Kiffin, we know the job he did here as the offensive coordinator. Nick Saban kind of got him back on track. He went to FAU, had a couple good years there. Now he's at Ole Miss, and they're doing the job. But you know that he's 0-2 against Nick Saban. He would love to beat the guy he calls the GOAT. And this Ole Miss team is good, Rodney. Let's get to it as we start to break down this game coming up Saturday afternoon in Oxford. Ole Miss and the Rebels have had the benefit of rest. They're coming off their bye, 2:30 on CBS. Alabama, surprising some people, favored by 12. Not me. It's the Alabama factor. Ole Miss 8-1, 4-1 in the SEC. Of course, they lost at LSU as Alabama did. But this is an Ole Miss team that they play fast, and Rodney, they can really run the football.
They can. Judkins and Evans. Yeah, they're really good at running the football. And you know what? Jackson Dart, he's a capable passer. I mean, he really is. Actually, he's a very talented guy as a quarterback, transfer from USC. He's been a little inconsistent throwing the ball, but they've got Mingo and several other receivers, really talented. And the way Lane Kiffin kind of devises that offense, schemes it, gets the receivers open. I mean, he's really a genius at doing that. And look, they're going to be very, very difficult to handle.
I like Jackson Dart. But Lane Kiffin's brilliance is that every year he can play differently. This is a power running team. You mentioned Quinshon Judkins out of Montgomery Pike Road High School, by the way. Just saying. 180 attempts, 1,036 yards, 13 touchdowns, averaging 5.8 yards per carry. He can run over you, he can run around you, and he can run away from you. He's got power, good size, and speed. He's a dynamic running back.
They really are. I mean, that offensive line, too. I mean, the job they've done up front, opening these holes, Gary, one of the top rushing teams in the country. There you see Judkins there, really explosive player.
All right, for Alabama, let's get to it, Rod. All right, listen, mathematically, they could still get to Atlanta. You say, well, it's a long shot. Of course it is, but it's possible. We've seen other teams beat Alabama and not be able to parlay it into success. If LSU were to lose at Arkansas and at Texas A&M, and Alabama beats Ole Miss and Auburn, Alabama would still go to the championship game. But if you're Ole Miss, I think if you're Lane Kiffin, you're telling your team, listen, if we can beat Alabama and Mississippi State, we're going to get there. Because I do think there's a chance that LSU could drop one of these last two at Arkansas and at A&M. So this SEC West has not been decided yet.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. I mean, listen, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin's been pointing to this game against Alabama. There's no question about that. Their goal, obviously, they want to go 11-1. Whether they go to the SEC championship or not, that's an incredible year. It's an incredible year for anyone. But really for Ole Miss, the job that Lane Kiffin has done to put them in that position.
He's been phenomenal. All right, recruiting last week. Julian Sayin, a five-star quarterback from Carlsbad, California in the class of 2024, commits to Alabama last week. Listen, he's got the same quarterbacks coach, personal coaches as Bryce Young. I'm going to make the comparison. He's 6'1", he's about 185. He's not the biggest guy, but he's very accurate. You'll see here, keeps his eyes downfield. He reminds a lot of people of Bryce Young. He chose Alabama over LSU and Georgia. And this is a guy that you never stop recruiting quarterbacks. They got 2 coming in 23 class, but this is a big hit for 2024.
He really is. You mentioned him. He is a lot like Bryce. Maybe not quite as elusive, but he moves really, really well. He's a guy that distributes the ball, sees the field. He's the kind of quarterback that, we've seen here over the last few years in terms of elite passers.
All right. He certainly must feel good about the future with Nick Saban, 2024 quarterback, already committing. All right, more TITV is coming up right after this. You stay with us. Roll Tide. How about that Alabama soccer team? 10-0 in the regular season in the SEC tournament, advanced to the SEC championship game, or during the regular season, advanced to the SEC championship game of the tournament, lost a tough one, 1-0 to South Carolina, the number 2 seed. But Alabama, 19-1 overall. And they are a number 1 seed, man, in the NCAA tournament. They're going to host Jackson State out of the SWAC Friday night at 6. Good luck to the Tide, man. They are really, really good. And welcome back to TITV. We're going to get right out to the phone lines as we got them backed up. Sammy in Walker County is first up. Hey, Sammy, how are you?
Thanks, Gary. Rodney, Alabama, I thought would win it all this year. I was wrong on that. But they will be in the conversation next year, as will Ohio State and Georgia, because Alabama will be there also because of the talent base. Now, what you do with that talent and other factors involved in that, but Alabama has got the talent base, and that's one of the key things. Now, the coaching is offensively, defensively, we got a little problems, that's for sure.
All right, Sammy. Well, yeah, I mean, you listen to my radio show. They got more than problems. It was my radio show that these coaches can't tell 1 from 1 is 2. So, I understand. It's frustration. I picked Alabama to win the national championship too. So you're not the only one. I still don't think the sky's falling. And again, if you want to be negative, you say they ought to be 5-4. If you want to be positive, you say they ought to be 9-0. But the reality of it is, this is still a team that can beat anybody they play. And if some adjustments are made in the offseason, I agree. I think there are good football players here. I think they're bringing more in. So, yeah, I agree, Sammy. I think they'll be right back in the conversation for the national championship again next year.
Yeah, I was thinking while Sammy was talking, you look at the offensive line, it looks like it's got a chance to be perhaps really good next year. You talk about, obviously, you have to replace Bryce Young. You got some running backs. You've got some receivers, young receivers that have played this year. Defensively, they should be okay. So I would think so, Sammy.
All right, let's get over to Brent and talk to Rick. Hey, Rick.
Fine. How are y'all tonight?
Doing well, my friend.
Good. Why did we lose to mobile quarterback?
Okay, that's a great.
And B, why can't we hold a team when we take the lead?
All right, Rick. A couple things. First of all, these quarterbacks that Alabama has problems with, everybody has problems with them. I mean, they're great players. I mean, I kind of hear that, and I'm not getting on you. I'm just saying, why does Alabama have trouble with mobile quarterback? Why does everybody have trouble with Jaden Daniels? Why does everybody have problems with Hendon Hooker? They're great players. Not holding the lead, and that's a bigger issue to me. When you get a chance to win a game and your defense can't get the stop it needs to help you win the game, that's a problem.
Yeah, and I thought Alabama actually did a pretty good job on Daniels in the first half, keeping him in the pocket. They pressured him. It was the second half, and again, that's when they lost the lead several times.
All right, we'll get to more phone calls and an email when we come back here on this edition of TITV. It's going fast and furious. We'll be back after this. And welcome back to Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's get to our email question of the day, and it is brought to us always by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family. How can Coach Saban restore greatness to our defense? UGA hasn't missed a beat after losing 10 players to the NFL. David in center. David, Georgia did have a great defense last year. They did lose a lot of players to the draft. It's been happening at Alabama for 10 or 12 years. Ronnie, I'll let you take that one. I mean, the defense needs to get better. Based on the standards of the past, I don't know. I know they're working at it.
Yeah, no, Gary, the one thing that really stands out to me is the lack of intensity. I think it starts up front defensively. You have to play with intensity. You have to dominate the line of scrimmage. They haven't done that. I think that's been an issue. Certainly, I just don't think the Alabama defense is playing with the confidence and the swagger that they've played with, through the years.
All right, let's get back out on the phone lines. And John is with us from Jasper. Hey, John, how are you? John, you there? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Good evening, Rodney and Gary.
Hey, man.
First thing I want to say, I'm going to bust people's bubbles right quick. We will beat Ole Miss, no doubt in my mind. I'm a 100% Alabama fan, I always have been. We got to look at the defense coordinator and offense coordinator. I know everybody needs a job, but Coach Saban's not washed up. When I played high school ball, Coach said you play the way you practice, and that's true. And y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you, John. Yeah, like we said earlier, I think Coach Saban's going to look at everything, including the assistant coaches.
Yeah, I think he always does, and I think he'll certainly make the changes if he feels they need to be made.
Well, John's confident about Ole Miss with Alabama getting a win. What do we think? We'll have our predictions when we come back to wrap up this edition of TITV on another glorious night in Tuscaloosa. We're back after this. Back, different spot, same show. Prediction time, Rodney. As always, you lead us off.
You know, I'm really interested, Gary, to see the mindset of this Alabama team coming off that disappointing performance at LSU. I think Alabama bounces back. I've got it 38-33.
Well, I'm going to do everybody a favor because I've been terrible picking Alabama games. I'm going to do the team a favor, the fans a favor. I'm going to pick Ole Miss. This year for Alabama, I think it's going to be another
Last play of the
field
game. Last play of the game.
I think Ole Miss will get their crack at the goalpost again. I'm picking the Rebels to win a close one, 35-34. Don't get mad at me. Like I said, that's probably good. Reverse mojo for the Crimson Tide. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Tider Insider TV. A reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. And we've got election coverage coming up. It's the election day. We've got Jabari and Tamika standing by with WVUA 23 election coverage. Take it away, guys.